Welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot enthusiast, and your local witch next door. And today I'm talking about the Page of Swords. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. If you love the show, the best way to support it is by listening daily, leaving a review, and subscribing or following in your favorite podcast app. For monthly hangouts, tarot Q&As, and more, you can join the Everyday Tarot Patreon family. If you're local to the greater Puget Sound area, check out the Let's Talk Tarot meetup group for the latest event postings. If you're not local to my area, you can join me for a virtual tarot card creation event on Friday, June 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I'll give you a list of recommended supplies. We'll meet online, and I'll walk you through the process of creating your own cards. Get the date on your calendar now and be on the lookout for the sign-up page coming soon. If you're interested in my free PDF with the 2025 5-card tarot spread I created just for you at the beginning of this year, you can get that by joining my newsletter list. My weekly newsletter always has the most up-to-date information on upcoming events, presentations, musings, and more. If you don't already know, I'm a sex and relationships therapist, seeing clients virtually all over Washington State. I love working with queer, poly, and witchy clients. If you'd like to work with a therapist that doesn't judge you and helps you learn how to deal with anxiety, chronic pain or illness, communication issues, self-advocacy, and sex, head to my website and book a free consultation now. You can find the links for any of these offers in the show notes or on my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot, in addition to the images of the cards I pull in each episode. All right, so we are in Season 8. We're getting close to the end now, as I'm going through all of the Suit of Swords, one card per episode. If you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can check those out. Season 1, I talked tarot basics. Seasons 2 and 3, I went through all the major arcana cards and an overview of the 4 suits. In Season 4, I talked about tarot and pop culture. Season 5, I went through 13 common tarot spreads. Season 6, I went through the whole suit of wands. Season 7, the suit of pentacles. And like I said, we're in Season 8 now, where I'm talking about the suit of swords. If you want to hear an episode dedicated to an overview of the suit of swords, you can check out episode 37. And today I'm talking about the Page of Swords. So images or symbols associated with this card. If you go ahead and pull out your tarot deck and take a look at what your Page of Swords looks like. So here I'm looking at the Anima Mundi tarot deck by Megan Wyrewenden. We have like a branch that goes across the middle of the card. And for the page, we have an image, like a monarch butterfly, I think, coming out of its cocoon. So it's sort of just emerged. Its wings are probably still wet. It's still kind of folded up, and it's sort of ready to take flight, or it's getting there. If we think of the page, so that it goes page, knight, queen, king. So the page is sort of like the youngest of the court cards, or like the royalty cards. So just like this butterfly, right, it's just emerging, it's showing up. In this deck, the swords are all depicted by flying things, generally birds. There's feathers, but this one we have, right, a monarch butterfly, and then we have a sword across the top of the card. In the Goddess of Love tarot deck by Gabrielle Herstick and illustrated by Julie Popescu, we have a person. They're seated on these like winding steps. They are holding a sword like above their head, like one hand on the hilt side and one on the sharp side of it, like almost like they're lifting weights above their head, but it's a sword. We have a beautiful sun in the background and a rainbow, and then we actually have, I think, like birds that are flying in what looks like the shape of a heart. And then we have all these like daffodils, I believe, on either side of the stairs. So we're like outside basking on the steps. We have our springtime flowers of daffodils. declining the steps there. So, right, we have this like opening, this like early spring sort of energy. This card in the deck, in this particular deck, is renamed to the Maiden of Swords, as this deck renames all of these sort of traditional masculine named cards to be feminine names. And so here it talks about that the Maiden of Swords takes the power of mind and thought and weaves it into the body. As an elemental representation of Earth, the Maiden of Air Swords, the page hangs like smoke with its ability to expand and move into new directions without losing the groundedness of the earth and the body. The mind can lead you into new dimensions of lust and love in a way that encompasses your whole being. Trust your instincts to guide you. Consider shifting perspectives, detaching yourself from only seeing things in one way, like the fixed energy of the earth in favor of a bird's eye view, the expansive quality of air. And again, in this card, we see sort of these birds all up in the air in this heart formation. It says being able to transform your vantage point and your mind is vital. It says the affirmation associated with this is I'm guided by love in mind and body. I open myself to all possibilities of the heart. And it says, how can releasing my attachment to the outcome help me find peace and presence? As the journal question with this card. And then lastly, in the Therapist Who Tarot deck, prompts by Drea Bloom and images by Rebecca Bloom, we see a figure here, and this one is also renamed. This is the Daughter of Swords in this deck. And the word associated with it is curious. And we see a person here, but then also this person has like antler-like or tree-like sort of branches or antlers coming out of the side of their head. And then they hold this, what sort of looks like a staff, but I think is how they depict the swords in this deck, like in a much more natural way, like as if it's carved with wood, versus the sort of what we see in a lot of other decks, where it's like a very medieval looking sword with like a bejeweled hilt, and we see the long double-edged aspect of the sword. It's interesting too because looking across the three decks, there's some similar colors. There's a lot of like sunny sun energy, like oranges and yellows. This Therapist Who Tarot deck card is all oranges and pinks and yellows. In the Goddess of Love, we have the rainbow, but we also have the sun in there and the pink background. The person, like the statue depicted, is all in pink, and then we have the yellow of the daffodils. And in the Anima Mundi deck, we have a lot of gray in it, but then the only color we do really see is brown, and then the colors of the monarch butterfly, which are orange. And so there's a lot of orangey, yellow, colors in these cards. In the Therapist Who Tarot deck, there's not a deck guidebook, but there are reflection questions on the back. So the questions are, what nourishes you and how? What is a gift you can give yourself? And what makes you feel alive? So again, this sort of like blooming, burgeoning, young energy that comes through here. In the Library of Esoterica, Tarot book by Taschen, they talk about that the Page of Swords is all about pursuing passion without ego. The Page of Swords is active and vigilant. The card demands a return to reason and the embrace of wisdom that comes with experience. Interesting there. So we're also learning, right? If you're a page, again, like I think really the only time I hear the word page in like modern day is in like government. Like a page is often someone that like shadows or works for a representative of government. And it is sort of a hardworking but often lowly and not very well paid position, and you do a lot of work. And again, if you think of sort of this like royalty or court context, it was like they were, I think, sort of like the attendants attending to folks. I am gonna look at actually the Page of Swords Okay, in the Anima Mundi deck, so it is a monarch butterfly. I was correct. It says it represents new energy. You may experience some conflict as you go, but your ability to reason, communication skills, and intuition will guide you along the way. So we are to bring our curiosity, energy, enthusiasm, ideas, communication, and new phases. Um, so again, if we've sort of, right, if you listen to the Ten of Swords episode, in the Ten of Swords, right, we're maybe realizing some of our anxieties, letting some of our fears go, like surrendering in this way, right? Then the page, we get to sort of open back up again, think about new experiences, think about what's next, think about what we want to put our time and energy into in that way, and how that might look different going forward. In the Fearless Tarot book by Elliot Adam, they talk about that the Page of Swords is about lowering unnecessary defenses. These defenses guard a wounded area of the heart that needs healing. The Page of Swords guards himself from the feedback others give, which stunts his development. He often pretends that he is fine, and it's everyone else who has the issue. If the Page of Swords could lower his unneeded defenses, he could experience a huge breakthrough. His openness would get him past blockages he keeps experiencing. He would then ascend to the next level. Do you ever get defensive? It says if you rush to say no, then this card is for you. Is it difficult to hear honest, critical feedback from others? Is fear of people seeing your vulnerabilities causing you to shut down or detach? The Page of Swords is often misunderstood and has been described as dishonest. However, this really isn't a fair assessment. He is not a liar because he has no awareness of the dishonesty. He is a poser. He is unable to assess himself accurately. His ego gets in the way. The Page of Swords is not a bad person. He's in denial about some difficult feelings and also has more maturing to do. If you look closely at the Page of Swords position in the picture, he's often like guarding himself in some way or herself. The sword is raised to swing at any incomer. It is difficult to hug this page. You can't seem to get close. He is in a totally defensive position. Even the biting winds of his words warn you to keep distant. The cold winds upset the birds above and lash at the trees. All this defensiveness is a mask for hurt, a feeling of vulnerability that others will discover. The Page of Swords doesn't feel 100% confident in what he is doing. If he could open himself to taking honest feedback and admit he doesn't know everything, he would experience a huge breakthrough. The Page of Swords represents the part of us that resists having vulnerability seen. He shows up in ourselves when we lash out in defense of our pride. He also appears in the form of other individuals in our day-to-day interactions who have no self-awareness. Sometimes when they come in the form of another person, he will trigger your own inner Page of Swords reaction. That's why he can be so irritating when he appears in the behaviors of people at work or of family members you are struggling with. Don't get irritated or triggered when the Page of Swords appears. Thank him, for he is revealing the resistant part of you that needs to be more vulnerable and open in order to improve. Pages can represent the young at heart of any gender. All right. In the Tarot and Astrology book by Corinne Kenner, the Page of Swords is talked about as the bright Page of Swords is the personification of air. She illustrates the highest qualities of the three air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Like a bird in flight, she embodies the fast-moving energy that connects the suit of swords to the higher realms of intellect and communication. The Page of Swords is intelligent and inquisitive, clear-headed and far-sighted. She's observant and alert. She has a bird's-eye view, and nothing can escape her eagle eye. She's versatile. She can flit readily from subject to subject. She moves at the speed of sound, and she can respond to even the slightest whisper. She's also extremely communicative. Her voice, as well as her thoughts, carry on the wind. She can be a gentle breeze or a stormy gale. She might be nearly invisible, but her presence is unmistaken. Like all pages, the Page of Swords is youthful with childlike enthusiasm and has an unbounded capacity to learn. She's a reader, a writer, and a talker. She's thoughtful and idealistic. She's naturally drawn to scholars, scientists, and philosophers. She contains multitudes of possibility, and it's her destiny to give birth to countless generations of students, teachers, and ideas. Like Pallas Athene, the goddess of wisdom, she carries a sword of logic and reason. It's the same sword that's pictured in the Ace of Swords, and she'll ensure that it always remains an instrument of truth and justice. And this description for this card, it calls it the personification of air. And lastly, in the Tarot for Change book, they talk about that the Page of Swords, the essence of the sword suit is that we each have the ability to think, evaluate, and reason. But these abilities can either liberate or imprison us, depending on the time and effort we take to learn them skillfully. The swords court, the page, knight, queen, and king provide a beautiful and clear visual description of this process of learning how to use the sword skillfully. From the reactive page to the focused knight, the discerning queen, and the still stoic king. In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the world's most influential spiritual texts, Lord Krishna gives this wisdom to the hero warrior Arjuna of the importance of training the mind. The senses wander, and when one lets the mind follow them, it carries wisdom away like a wind-blown ship on the waters. Today, evidence-based therapy models incorporate mindfulness, and a lot of people go so far to be called mindfulness-based, meaning they're rooted in the ancient technology of learning to focus the mind in the present and witness the activity of the mind rather than experience its activity as the self. In acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT, for example, the self is context and not content. Mindfulness exercises performed in clinical settings are done with the hope that rather than react immediately to every thought and feeling that passes through, a person who learns to observe the mind is able to widen the gap between the stimulus and the response. They can see a thought before reacting to it, experience a bit of distance from it, and thereby become less reactive. From there, they're able to move with greater intention and connection to their values. Tarotist Lonmila Duquette has written that when we identify with the sword's domain of our experience, the cognitive intellectual, we rise above and separate ourselves from our lower nature, the animal soul. But when we over-identify with the intellect, in other words, when we are too attached to the mind and its thoughts, we also separate ourselves from the higher parts of our souls that represent greater realities and levels of consciousness. We alienate ourselves from the stuff of life that transcends intellectual comprehension. French philosopher Henri Bergson has written that intellect is characterized by a natural inability to comprehend life. So perhaps this is why, when a mystic or anyone who desires a more authentic experience of reality realizes they must wage a kind of symbolic battle with the mind for the seat of authority, they send in their best warriors. Enter the Page of Swords. Clouds are a prominent symbol in illustrations of the Swords Court, and particularly in the Page of Swords. The metaphor of mental events, thoughts, storylines, or judgments as clouds passing through the sky is a common one. The quote by Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron comes to mind: "You are the sky, everything else, it's just the weather." Here we see the Page of Swords with clouds swirling above her. They symbolize future thoughts, past thoughts, anxious thoughts, fearful thoughts, soothing and pleasant thoughts too. Her sword is drawn in reactivity. She's ready to attack. As the court cards evolve, we'll track this progression and see the way that with time and practice, a new kind of relationship with the clouds, the contents of the mind begins to unfold, one that is less adversarial and more spacious. With experience, the page will come to realize that the activity of the mind isn't necessarily something to challenge directly. Though you can learn that sometimes direct challenge is helpful and will develop the discernment to know when, but rather that it is something to come into a more flexible relationship with. You will learn that clouds do form and sometimes pour rain, but that getting rid of them isn't a requirement to going forward. She'll see how, if you can hunker down and ride them out, eventually the clouds will dissipate altogether. Over time, as we'll see later with the king, the young warrior who was once ready to do battle at the drop of a hat can quell the need to react at all. So I like how in this book they talk about sort of, right, the evolution we're going to go on, and we're starting with the page, we're going to go to the knight, the queen, and then the king, and that there is this sort of, again, like a micro hero's journey within even these cards, that we start in this like younger, maybe more brash, interested in learning, but often uninformed way. And then as we go throughout the court cards in each suit, right, we sort of progress to almost like a final state. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today on this topic. I'm pulling cards from the Citadel, a Fantasy Oracle by Ben Inkwright. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle a couple times. And again, I'm going to be thinking about, right, how do we recognize, become aware of when our thoughts are sort of overtaking us, when we're following our anxieties down the road, and when we might be able to use some discernment to separate ourselves from our thoughts, right? They're talking about that this is sort of what meditation is, right? Having this distance, being able to sort of watch your thoughts go by like clouds, as they talked about in the book, and sort of decide whether to engage with them, to continue with them, to go down the road with them, or whether to make different choices. And so I would love to know, right, how do we do that, right? It's one thing to say we can recognize that meditation is one way, but it can be very challenging. Okay, interesting. I pulled the Acolyte in reverse, and that says the Acolyte is about new projects and learning. So again, okay, on theme. But of course, we are in reverse here, so I imagine it's going to tell us to stop focusing on book learning, perhaps, and that we need to focus on like lived experience. But let's see. Okay, so reverse the Acolyte is about, says reverse the card shows an acolyte who has not progressed as fast as their peers. Though you've been working hard, you're not yet where you hoped to be. Just remember that this work hasn't been for nothing. Everything you've learned is still helping you grow and reach your goals. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. And it doesn't say this, but I'm also hearing this sort of information here of like, don't compare yourself to other people, right? That it's not helpful necessarily, right? Like if we think of an acolyte as like working under a priest and that they, right, are eager to begin the journey of learning, right? We can all recognize times in our life where we have been the acolyte, right? Like just signing up for the adventure, going along for the ride, learning, being at the beginning of a journey. But also right now, right, it's saying we've been working hard, right? We see where we're trying to go. We're not quite there yet, right? Again, we're only the page so far. We have yet to progress to the knight, the queen, and the king. But that we're in the beginning of this journey, and the work hasn't been for nothing. And we're going to keep growing and reaching our goals. And it's almost like, right, the seeds have been planted. Right, our butterfly is hatching out of the cocoon, and now we just have to, again, like dry off our wings and figure out like where are we going next, right? Where are we gonna migrate to if we're a monarch butterfly? And usually it's very far where they migrate to. So, right, we have a long way to go, perhaps, to get to our goals, and maybe we've been feeling impatient about it, or again, we're comparing ourselves to others, and this card's telling us, right, no need to worry. Like it's going to happen. You're doing what you can. Just kind of keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about what it looks like for others or comparison, and just kind of keep with it, and you'll keep learning and expanding as we go forth in this journey. All right, so links for the tarot decks I talk about will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.